So the big tax question is this: how do wealthy people keep their money working for them when selling their business, real estate, or other highly appreciated assets without paying hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in tax? What if we, as business and real estate owners who have poured blood, sweat, and tears to growing our wealth, and who didn't hire expensive tax attorneys and CPAs to map out an exit strategy, knew their secrets? Instead of recreating the wheel, why can't we just model the way they deferred 30 to 50% in tax, paid off debt, funded their next business dream, and most importantly, leave a financial legacy to give to the causes we believe in most? What if their secrets weren't complicated at all, and you just need a guide who is a few steps ahead of you? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Garretts Swarts, and welcome to Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way for you to grow your wealth. Hey, I'm your host, Garrett Swarts, and each episode I am joined by some of the best real estate minds, financial and wealth advisors in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration, so together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. Hey, I'm excited about our next guest. It's not too often you get a best-selling author and one of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad advisors. For those who haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad or the Cash Flow Quadrant, I'm sure there's just a few of you who haven't yet. But if you haven't, you've got to get those books right away. Our next guest, he is the founder of Corporate Direct, and he founded that in 1988 to assist entrepreneurs and investors in protecting their assets, maintaining their privacy, and advancing their financial goals. He has learned that there are far too many deals or strategies out there, or people or promoters that aren't really in your best interest. And so he's going to bring to light some of those things, and he's going to share with us some wisdom. You can find him at corporatedirect.com. Hey, Garrett, please welcome to the show, Garrett Sutton. Hey, Garrett, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, Brett.
Excellent. And so would you give our listeners a little bit about your background? And by the way, for our listeners, I grew up in Rockland, California, and he had an office many years, and he would commute from Reno to Rockland, which is pretty cool. And Reno is just a couple hours from where I'm at here now in Roseville, Rockland area. And so it's kind of a small world. If you're listening in Northern California, Garrett is a long-term Reno and Northern California business professional. With that being said, Garrett, give us a little bit about your background and current focus.
Sure. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area and went to Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley, crossed the Bay, went to Hastings Law School in San Francisco, the University of California's law school in San Francisco, and always liked corporate law and, practiced law in San Francisco and Washington, D.C., and it just became time to move out of the big city. But this wasn't recently. This was 1989 that I moved from the Bay Area up to Reno. And as you know, Nevada is a great state for corporate law. And we also like Wyoming for its corporate and LLC law. And so I've just been focusing on that area of the practice. And I became very fortunate to become associated with Robert Kiyosaki and his team in the year 2000. So I've worked with Robert and the team for 20 years. And we've traveled not only the United States, but around the world. Teaching financial education. There's a great desire for people all over the world to learn about financial education. It's just been really rewarding. And so I've written 6 books in the Rich Dad Advisor series. I have another one coming out next month. So it keeps me off the street, all this writing. And we do like helping people. I get on the phone with people. We talk about how to structure their affairs and best protect their assets. So that's it in a nutshell, Brett.
Absolutely love it. So excited about this interview, and I'm sure our listeners are too, so we're going to dive in. Before we dive into some of the strategies and some of the wisdom that we're going to share on the specifics, I'm curious. I want you to take a step back, Garrett. Help our listeners to get to know you a little bit. I believe we've all been given gifts in this life. I believe they're God-given gifts, and they're given to us to bless others. So I want you to go back to your law school days. Maybe it was your college days. Maybe it was your teenage days. What was that gift that you were given, Garrett? And how does that help? How does it help you help bless others today?
Well, if there is a gift, I would say that it's my ability to take the legal concepts and write them in a clear manner. I tell stories. You use stories and examples compete so people can understand the concepts. So I guess the gift would be the ability to write legal matters clearly.
Excellent.
Too many attorneys play hide the ball, Brett. You know, they almost want to confuse the issue. And my goal when I'm writing is to make it as clear as possible for people to understand this.
Now, growing up, when you were in school, were your teachers telling you, "Wow, Garrett, you just write this really simple and clear"? Like, was this something where, of course, you probably had to develop and work on, but I also am curious: was that the gift that was identified at early age?
Well, I always enjoyed writing, and you know, my friends and I would put out newspapers, and you know, we would take over the newspaper at the high school, and so we were always writing. I don't know, I just was always interested in that field, so I've always been writing. Even when I was in elementary school, friends and I wrote series of stories and things. We also played baseball and football. I just want you to know that. So.
Yeah, you were just a complete book nerd, right? You were having some fun.
I got the healthy exercise.
Absolutely, love that. Great. Well, let's dive right in. I want to maybe the top 2 or 3 secrets I want to focus on and this is a lot of our listeners are highly successful commercial real estate owners, business owners, right? And so, and a lot of them, unfortunately, they think they know it all, right? I'm kind of that entrepreneur type A personality, but we need folks like you, Garrett, who level of wisdom and experience to share, and protect our, the wealth that we've created, right? So maybe give us just the 1 or 2 top things that if guidance and wisdom when it comes to protecting your assets today.
Well, certainly you want to use LLCs and in some cases, limited partnerships, LPs. And a sophisticated investor is going to know that. But what we see with the sophisticated investors, Brett, is sometimes they let things slide, right? Sometimes they've got the structure set up. They think it's all done, but you have these continuing obligations. They call them corporate formalities. And you've got to do meetings of you have to hold a meeting every year and do minutes of it where you write down what took place at the meeting so you can prove to the court, if it ever goes that far, that you followed the formalities and you had a meeting every year. You have to pay the fees to the state. You'd be surprised how many people let that slip. You have to file the tax returns for these entities. And so a lot of people will, call me up, explain what they have, and, we can do a tune-up. We can help clean things up because this is something that is ongoing. It's not a one and done. You've set up the LLC, you're fine. You have to keep working at it and following these corporate formalities. A second mistake that people make is they don't appreciate that you don't want to cram too many assets, too many properties into one LLC. Some people I've seen I have an LLC set up, I'll put the next property into it and the next one. And pretty soon they've got 10 properties in one LLC. And what can happen is if the tenant sues over an accident at the first property, they have a claim against the LLC. That's who they're renting from. Bonanza, they get into that LLC and there are 10 other properties that can satisfy the claim. So you don't want to create a target-rich LLC. Now, do you put 3 properties in one LLC and then 3 in the next, or is it 2? It's really a judgment call. But I think people need to appreciate that you don't want to have too many properties inside one LLC.
Very well said, right? And then the first part too, right? A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners, real estate owners, they're always on to the next deal, the next thing, and they think they want to kind of set and forget it. It's the way a lot of our minds work. And what you're saying, hey, make sure you got the protections, not only with multiple LLCs, but actually the ongoing maintenance of that LLC, right? With making sure you're doing corporate formalities and holding those meetings. So if I'm listening, and Garrett, I'm like, Garrett, I haven't done all my stuff the last couple of years. Like, what? I call you up. What's that look like to get all this stuff in order?
Well, don't tell anyone that you haven't done that, but call us up and, we can clean it up. If you haven't had the meetings, there's a way to get it cleaned up so that you have a robust minute book with the meetings in it. This is as we kind of head towards the end of the year, a lot of people at the end of the year just sit back and during the holidays will look at what they have. And really, if there is a problem, we can just get on the phone and work things out.
Excellent. And that's corporatedirect.com. So I want to shift a little bit to just the real estate side of things in sort of the world we're in right now, post-COVID, but also, I'm going to say post-COVID, we're still in COVID, but sort of post the potential crash. And now we're back up, and now we're still in this weird zone of high stocks, right? An election pending. What is your overall wisdom, Garrett, given what you've, all of the folks you've helped and being with Robert Kiyosaki? What's your overall wisdom and take right now as far as real estate investing? What are you sharing with your friends and family?
Well, Brent, I wish I had that crystal ball. But for me, just me personally, I think there's going to be a decline in real estate values coming up. I think we're kind of floating on all this money they've printed. I don't think that lasts forever. It never does. And so some of the real estate investors I work with are basically keeping their powder dry for a decline in real estate values. I just somehow, maybe miraculously we come out of this thing, but I just, my own personal feeling is that there is a decline coming.
So let's walk through that now. So we're capital gains tax solutions, right? And a part of keeping the powder dry. Like, well, Garrett, all my money's tied up in all this real estate or tied up in these other assets. And if I sell, I'm going to get hammered with this capital gains tax, 30 to 50%, Garrett, as you know, and depreciation recapture on this property I've owned for years and years and years. So how do you get your powder dry, Garrett, without getting hammered by the capital gains tax?
Well, I'm saying if you, maybe you keep that property if you can. And the money that it's generating, hopefully it is, we have all these eviction issues and all, but hopefully the money that you're generating from your real estate, you set it aside for some bargains that I believe are coming our way. So I would not be telling people to sell right now, but maybe that's a prudent thing to do. If there's a way you can get out and get your cash and have it ready for when prices decline. I do know several real estate investors that are doing exactly that.
Yeah, there is a way, and it's called the Deferred Sales Trust. And there's a Monday morning quarterback deal back in 2006 that I think it's the most prolific Deferred Sales Trust client for timing purposes ever. And he said he sold his property in Minnesota, and his biggest thing was he couldn't make sense of the 1031, and he thought the prices were overpriced at the time, and so he wasn't going to trade, with a higher property in the short period of time. So for the first time, he used the Deferred Sales Trust, moved all of his equity into the trust, and then 5 years later, the property that he sold, Garrett, was foreclosed on by the bank. And guess what? Who the bank called? They called him and said, "Hey, you know that property you sold 5 years ago?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, would you be interested in buying it back?" And he says, "Well, it depends. What's the price?" And they said, "Well, 40% less than what you sold it for." And he says, "Okay, that sounds pretty good." So he actually bought his property back, all tax deferred through his Deferred Sales Trust 5 years later, not using the 1031 exchange. And Garrett, I heard that for the first time at Marcus and Millichap back in Northern California. And this was in about 2009 and 10. And I said, oh my gosh, this will change everything if you can do that. And this is why we started our company. So there is a way. And for listeners who are listening right now, if you're interested in learning more about that, go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. But that being said, Garrett, what are some of the frustrations you've seen when it comes to the 1031 exchange that you or your clients have faced?
Well, I think one of the main frustrations is just the time deadlines, the 45 days, the 180 days. You have people who are scrambling. I've had clients that, the property that they really wanted fell through and they have to fall back to this other property they don't like. So that is a frustration. That would be the main one. So the 1031 certainly has its place, but your story, Brett, about the guy from Minnesota, what a win that was for him.
Yeah, huge win, huge win. And actually, I had another client we just closed a $2.6 million sale in Tennessee, and he sold a business and did not want to 1031 into another business. He wanted to actually be in real estate. Now he deferred $600,000 of tax and is using that to build 80 units in Tennessee. And so that's pretty nice too, all tax deferred. The other thing too, I want to touch on the importance of diversification, liquidity, and getting out of debt during a potential, what I agree with you. I think prices are going to go down. I think there's going to be some blood in the streets. I think there's going to be some real opportunities. Is it going to take 3 months, 6 months, 12, 24? Perhaps, right? We don't know the timing of that, but there's going to be opportunities to buy real estate at a discount. So what's the importance of diversification, liquidity, and being out of debt and preparation for that?
Well, in terms of diversification, in traveling with Robert and the advisors, there are some people that don't diversify. I mean, they know how to manage duplexes and fourplexes. They're good at it. They know all the brokers in the area that can get them those types of properties, and they don't diversify. So, some people just know what they can do well and stick with it. Other people, do like to diversify. I think that's fine. Robert Kiyosaki would now tell you got to diversify part of it into gold and silver. So that's a diversification strategy. In terms of liquidity, I think that the interest rates are going to stay way low, even though the prices come down. So I don't see the Fed raising interest rates. So I think people are still going to be able to get into properties for a decent amount down and bank financing after that. So I think liquidity is going to be, a good thing in the future. And then what was the last one there, Brett?
Well, the last one was debt, so not being in too much debt so that you can the banks will actually loan to you, right?
Right.
And then you can take on smart debt when the prices are low. And the idea is when the 1031, if you're identified within 45 days, typically you're selling high and buying a higher within 180, taking on more debt. And you're going, okay, well, I got a great price for it, but now I just overpaid. And that's the whole thing of timing and too much debt. So just connecting the dots with actually getting your powder dry, getting out of debt, being prepared to look really good on a balance sheet for a bank to lend to you. To me, that's really powerful given what can happen in the next 6, 12, 24 months.
I agree completely. I mean, if if your property has declined in value and, you could have a bank call a note in that situation. So to reduce your debt and be ready for loans that you'll be able to get in the future, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yep. And for the listeners who are listening, deferred sales trust, we can do all that. And also, by the way, you can sell real estate now, move into the deferred sales trust, and then you can invest in gold and silver as well, all tax deferred. That being said, what other things are folks missing out? COVID-19 has presented a whole nother set of laws for renters, right? And not favorable for tenants, especially in California. And then just asset protection. So the exodus of California real estate and owners moving to places like Nevada. Give us any insight on that, and how are you helping your clients in California navigate that change?
Well, we do see it, as you mentioned, here in Reno. Every 10th license plate on a car is California. I mean, there's so many Californians in Reno right now. So it's very obvious that this exodus is occurring. The Franchise Tax Board in California is much more aggressive than the IRS. They're going to go after people who have said that they've left California, especially if you have assets and a good income. They'll chase you for 2 years, and you have to prove to them that you have moved out of the state of California. And some of their requirements or some of their standards, if your square footage of the house you keep in California is greater than the house you live in Nevada, that for them is a factor that you're still a California resident. There are all sorts of standards they have. So if you're going to be moving from California to another state, to Nevada or any other state, you really need to plan ahead. You need to be able to show that you are a voter in the new state, your cars are registered in the new state. Certainly, if your kids are going to school in California, it's pretty hard to say you're not a California resident. So you've got to make that complete move. And people are certainly. But we do assist people leaving the state of California. But I just have to caution them that you've got to plan ahead of time. And the standard is you have to be outside of California for 6 months and a day. I recommend you're out of California for 7 months, and just don't use credit cards when you go back into California. Use cash, because they'll track the credit card transactions to see where you were using your money.
Yes. So if you're considering moving out of California, please go to corporatedirect.com and connect with Garrett, because you want to make sure you're following all of the laws and you're not going to get hit with a big tax bill. Well said, Garrett. What other thoughts too in regards to just investing? Maybe share with us maybe one of the best kept secrets that Robert has taught you that maybe was a surprise to you, right? Before you started working with them, you started in 2000, 20 plus years. And what was what was the one thing you're like, oh, wow, that really changed what you had known before and has helped you help other clients? What would be that one thing you think of?
Well, the one thing is to invest in real estate. When I started with Robert, I had, one little rental property, but I didn't ever consider owning apartment buildings or triple net lease properties or anything. And to his credit, Robert made it very clear that if you're going to be part of the team, you've got to invest in real estate. And I look back on the 20 years that I have done that, and it's been excellent. So, that was one tip that I've passed on to other people is, read the books, understand the area, but at some point you got to invest in that first property. And, unless things go completely haywire, in the long term, when you look back 20 years later, you will not regret that decision.
Excellent. And then curious, are you investing with Robert into these multifamily properties or triple net deals? Are you doing it on your own? Walk us through. Okay, on your own. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, Robert's really good about, not taking money from people who want to promote things. And he's just really walks the straight line on that. Investments and all. And so he's encouraged us to do it on our own, which in part is great because it helps you figure it out. Instead of just riding on someone else's investment, you have to figure out how to make it work, which allows you to do better deals in the future.
Mm-hmm. So well said. Yep. So well said. Love that. By the way, what's the best deal you've ever done?
It's funny. The best deal, a little one, was, those, the land sales, the tax lien sales. Before they caught on, I went to one in a rural county here in Nevada, and it was just kind of a lark. But I bought this piece of property right on Highway 50 at a tax lien sale for $2,000. And lo and behold, about 6 years later, someone wanted it, and I sold it to him for $95,000. So that was a pretty good one. And so my son is in law school now, and I wanted him to see what one of these tax lien sales looked like. So I went to one 2 years ago in the same county. And whereas at the first one, there were 10 guys there who all kind of knew each other and were kind of playing the game together, there were 350 people at this thing, and no one could get a deal, right? There were all these newbies there that were bidding the prices up. And so we laughed. You couldn't get a deal there anymore.
That's hilarious. That's fantastic. And Highway 50, by the way, it goes basically from Sacramento up into South Lake Tahoe. It is one of the main corridors there. So what part of Highway 50, just for our local listeners?
Well, when you come down from Tahoe, you go through Carson City, and then it becomes the loneliest highway in the world from Carson City all the way to Ely, Nevada. We were in Silver Springs, so about 30 minutes east of Carson City.
Okay, excellent. Yep. Beautiful country, by the way, if you're ever looking to visit the whole Lake Tahoe, Reno, Carson City area. Okay, awesome. Well, that's great. You just said a whole lot of wisdom here. Maybe give me the biggest mistake you, a client, or a partner has ever made when it comes to capital gains tax deferral.
I had a client that got hit pretty hard because they couldn't do a 1031. And that was, wasn't my fault. I mean, they were working with a broker and it just didn't come together. So, I think some of the solutions you're talking about, Brett, here is things that people should consider as an alternative to the 1031. I'm sure you've heard that in Biden's tax plan, he wants to get rid of 1031 exchanges. And I've talked to so many real estate professionals that say that will happen over their dead body. But, that's in the news. So you have to look for other alternatives.
Absolutely. It's kind of scary to think what could happen if the 1031 goes away. On our side, we don't want it to go away because the community we think would be bad for everybody. But the deferred sales trust is not a 1031. It's section IRC 453, which is known as seller carryback. So our business would likely boom if that happens, but we don't want that to happen. But that being said, you do want a backup plan for a failed 1031 exchange. Like we just did a deal in Georgia. It was a 128 unit multifamily property. And the gentleman sold his property for about $7.6 million, had about $4.5 million of debt. And he was past his 45 identification period. And he was able to use the deferred sales trust to save his failed 1031 exchange and deferring $1.1 million in tax they would have paid. And the cool thing is now he's debt free. He's got about $3 million, and he's going to put it into multifamily opportunity funds to buy deals at a discount over the next 6 to 12 months. No timing restrictions, all tax deferred. So yes, you do want to learn more about that. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That being said, Garrett, are you ready for the lightning round?
I am.
All right. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget you would make sure you would do?
Buy real estate. I didn't buy it when I was 25 years old. I was playing rugby. You were thinking about the next game, but I wish at age 25, especially in the Bay Area, I mean, you could have bought some homes in the Oakland East Bay area for $50,000 to $60,000 that are now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I wish I'd done that at age 25.
Well said. What is the one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And my own. I have to hold it up. Loopholes of Real Estate. This is a great book for people to read.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Give me a mobile or digital resource that you recommend for your business.
For my business. I mean, the one app I use all the time, and it's not really related to my business, but the one app I use because I write all the time is dictionary.com. That is a great app. And it's got a thesaurus, and I just use it all the time. I don't think it relates to law or real estate, but it's very useful.
Very useful. No, I appreciate you sharing that. Favorite leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
Well, I always like Winston Churchill's "Nothing was won without enthusiasm." I think that's a great quote. And you just have to bring an energy to things. You see people who don't have an energy or a spirit for what they're entering into, and you feel sorry for them. I mean, there has to be that level of energy and enthusiasm if you're going to succeed.
Love that. Absolutely. It makes perfect sense. What are you curious about right now?
I'm curious about what's going to happen in the next year. This whole COVID thing and the lockdowns and everything else, I'm just curious how it's going to be seen, not only in a year, but in 50 years. I think people are going to look back at this time and see that some crucial public policy mistakes were made. And I hope the press then is free enough to report that.
Likewise. Yes. Let's hope and pray that is the truth. Last question. It's actually my favorite question, and it helps us to get to know you a little bit more. And so after all your success and after, writing all the books and helping so many countless individuals have asset protection and growing their real estate wealth and knowledge, how do you stay centered in your values? And then how do you stay encouraged to reach for new goals?
Well, in order to stay centered, it's just spend time with my family. I've got a son and twin girls who are in their 20s, and a great wife. And, we spend a lot of our time up at Lake Tahoe. We have a place up there, and, that's where I get centered and do all my writing. And so that's really important. Doing all this, legal work and the writing and all that stuff doesn't matter if you can't have good time with your family. So that's how I stayed centered. And then what's the second question?
So after achieving so much, how do you stay encouraged to reach for new heights?
I've always been that way. I don't know. I just have always wanted to do something more. I don't see retiring. I'm not a golfer. I don't know what I'd do if I just retired. So I'm going to keep working, and I'm going to keep writing. And for me, that's enjoyable.
Absolutely. No, love that. And for our listeners who want to get in touch with you, Garrett, what's the best place for them to find you? And any parting words for our listeners? The floor is yours.
Well, Corporate Direct is our main website. We also offer a free 15-minute consultation with an incorporating specialist, to see what we can offer, and if there's a clicking there, if you feel comfortable with us. That number is 800-600-1760. So they can call 800-600-1760 and get a free consultation. And then, I just really enjoy the fact that you, Brett, provide this information. I've been on a number of podcasts, and I just think it's great that you and others are providing this information to people, because unfortunately they don't teach it in school, and you have to go out and get this information on your own. And it's going to be through books and seminars and podcasts like yours, Brett. And I think it's great that you're doing this. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your expertise and a part of your story with us. It's really been a pleasure. So I want to encourage you to keep using the gifts and talents you've been given to bless others and help them become more financially free and to have their assets protected. And so please connect with Garrett Sutton at corporatedirect.com for all of those types of challenges that you're facing. And with that, I also want to thank our listeners for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions Podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust, or perhaps even moving outside of California and establishing residency in Nevada, and you need a proven specialist to help you with that. And Garrett Sutton at corporatedirect.com is the best way for you to grow your wealth. With that, please rate, review, subscribe, share this episode with somebody that can help out. Hey, we appreciate you listening, and go bless someone today. Goodbye, everybody.
You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions with Brett Swarts. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it helpful. Visit capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.